On the very edge of an African reserve, where golden grasses sway gently in the wind, stands an old wooden house. Its beams are darkened by rain, its roof creaks under the burning sun, but it still stands a symbol of stubbornness and strength. In this house has lived a lone man for 30 years, Ranger Mr. Raymond. He has no wife, no children, no relatives who could visit him. His only family is the forest, the savannah, and the animals he protects every day. For the younger rangers at the station, he has long been a legend, and they tell stories about him that he can calm an angry elephant with a look or make a lion lower its head. For Raymond, nature was never just work. It was his home, his friend, and the only true meaning of his life. He never sought glory, never thought of himself as a hero. He simply lived among animals the way others live among neighbors. Every morning, he would set out on the trail, making his rounds and writing down animal tracks in his worn notebook. Sometimes he found fresh traces of poachers, and then his eyes grew hard as steel, for to him every gunshot was like a blow to the heart. But more often, his days were filled with silence, the rustle of leaves, and the cries of birds. In those moments, he felt truly happy. One rainy day, when the sky darkened and thunder rolled over the savannah, he went out on his usual patrol along the stream. Water crashed against the rocks, the ground turned into sticky mud, and every step was heavy. Suddenly, through the noise of the rain, he heard a strange sound. It wasn't the crack of a branch or the roar of thunder. It was a roar weak, broken, as if someone was trying to cry out but no longer had the strength. Raymond stopped, listened carefully, and moved toward the sound, pushing aside wet branches. What he saw in the bushes would stay in his memory forever. On the ground lay a young lion, not yet a full-grown male, but already with the beginnings of a mane. His paw was swollen and rotting, covered in flies. His eyes were dull, stripped of the pride of a predator. All that remained was pain and despair. Around him, there were no tracks of other lions. And Raymond understood the pride had cast him out, leaving him to die. He knew that in the wild, weakness meant death, but still the sight made his heart ache. Slowly, he knelt down beside the animal. He removed his hat and spoke softly, calmly, as if addressing an old friend. The lion tensed, his breathing grew uneven, but he didn't attack. Raymond pulled out the small first aid kit he always carried and began cleaning the wound. When he touched the paw, the lion flinched and growled weakly, but he didn't rise or bare his teeth. At that moment, the old man realized a silent trust had formed between them. He bandaged the wound, covered the lion with his cloak, and stayed by his side despite the cold rain. Hours passed before help arrived. Raymond called the station and waited, sitting on the wet ground, refusing to leave the injured animal. The lion's eyes slowly closed and opened again, as though clinging to life. When the rescue vehicle finally came, he whispered, "Your name is Barrow now," the one chosen to live. Together with the team, they carefully lifted the lion onto a stretcher and rushed him to the rescue center. Veterinarians worked tirelessly. They stitched the wound, administered fluids, and stayed by the lion's side through the night. Raymond never left the room. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, whispered stories, and spoke as though the animal could understand every word. And perhaps it did, because the lion remained calm, breathing raggedly but never losing the faint spark in his eyes. Weeks later, Barrow was moved to a rehabilitation cage placed right beside Raymond's wooden house. From that day on, the ranger visited him daily. He brought meat, medicine, and most importantly, his presence. He would sit beside the bars for hours, telling stories of his youth, about the eagle that once followed him, about the time he nearly died of malaria, about storms and sunsets over the savannah. At first, Barrow stayed in the corner, hiding, watching silently. But gradually, he began to inch closer, his ears turning toward the man's voice. His eyes lit up again, curiosity replacing despair. Soon he was lying near the bars, while Raymond spoke, as though listening, as though truly understanding. Between them, a bond was forming not through force, but through patience. One time, Raymond fell ill with fever and couldn't leave his bed for 2 days. Barrow roared through the night, his cries echoing across the reserve until the other rangers came searching. They found Raymond weak but alive, and when he returned to Barrow's side, the lion pressed himself against the bars, exhaling heavily as if finally at peace again. That moment convinced the station. This was no ordinary bond. Months passed. Barrow's fur grew sleek and golden once more, his eyes sharp, his movements strong. He began to hunt small live prey in the training area, instincts returning. By the 4th month, he was stalking, leaping, climbing rocks again. By the 5th, the veterinarians concluded he was ready to return to the wild. Raymond sat beside him for a long time that night. He stroked the young lion's mane, speaking quietly. It's time. His heart ached at the thought, but he knew Barrow didn't belong behind bars. He belonged to the forest, the endless plains, the life he had been born into. At dawn, they opened the cage. Barrow stepped out, paused, and turned his head toward the old man. For a moment, their eyes locked, and in that silence was everything words could never say. Then the lion walked into the tall grass and disappeared. No one spoke. Raymond stood alone, clutching his worn scarf, watching until there was nothing left but the whisper of the wind. 3 months later, on a quiet morning, a familiar roar echoed at the station gate. Barrow had returned. He didn't break the fence or demand food. He simply sat there, watching the house with calm eyes. When Raymond stepped out, the lion growled softly, lay down, and waited. From then on, a ritual began. Every few months, Barrow returned. He never stayed past noon, never intruded. He simply came, sat quietly, and left again. Raymond would place cooked meat on the fence and stand silently nearby. Barrow ate slowly, never rushing, as though keeping the manners of a guest who once had been a patient. This went on for years. A man and a beast, bound by something deeper than words. Their friendship didn't need language, didn't need gestures, just a presence, a gaze, and time spent together. It was as though they were guardians of each other's souls. But time is merciless. Raymond grew old, his hands began to tremble, his steps slowed. Eventually, the doctors diagnosed him with terminal liver cancer. People begged him to move to the city for treatment, but he refused. I want to die where I saved lives, he said, not in a place of cold machines and white walls. He put his affairs in order. He cleaned the wooden house, folded his blankets, and hung his old patched shirt neatly on a hook. He ate less and less, lying in bed with his gaze fixed on the green line of forest outside the window. The rangers at the station knew he was waiting for one thing: to see Barrow one last time. One dry season morning, Barrow appeared at the gate again, but this time, his roar was loud, insistent, circling the station as if calling for someone. His eyes searched, restless, unwilling to leave. The rangers realized something was wrong. They rushed to the wooden house and found Raymond barely breathing, his eyes half closed. They carried him carefully on a stretcher to the gate, where Barrow had been waiting for nearly an hour. When the old man heard the roar, tears welled in his eyes. His lips moved faintly. Barrow is here? They brought the stretcher close to the fence. Barrow stood still, then stepped forward and placed his massive paws against the iron bars, as though trying to reach him. Raymond opened his eyes, lifted his trembling hand, and touched the lion's claws through the gap. The entire station fell silent. Not a single ranger dared to interrupt that sacred moment. With broken breath, Raymond whispered, "Good, you have lived just as I hoped." His voice was weak, but his eyes glowed with pride. Barrow bowed his head, pressing his forehead gently against the bars, his eyes never leaving the man. In the golden grass, under the clear sky, with a soft wind around them, Raymond exhaled his last breath. His hand still rested on his old friend's paw. The rangers wept openly, unable to contain their grief. They buried him that same afternoon near the stream where he had once saved Barrow. On a simple wooden cross, they carved the words, "Mr. Raymond, keeper of the old forest, friend of the lion." A few months later, Barrow returned. This time he didn't stop at the gate. He walked slowly through the grass, straight to the grave. There he lay for hours, eyes half closed, the wind whispering through his golden mane. It was as if he was saying farewell. After Raymond's death, the station felt emptier. The young rangers who once saw their work as duty now looked at it differently. Each felt they had to carry on the old man's mission. They took care of his wooden house, never letting it fall to ruin. At night, they lit the kerosene lamp by his window, as if inviting his spirit to return. Barrow kept coming back to the stream. Sometimes he sat motionless, staring into the distance. Other times he growled softly, as if speaking to the one who was no longer there. His presence became a symbol for the Rangers. They knew the bond Raymond created was so strong that not even death had broken it. One night, under a full moon, a pride of lions approached the stream. The younger lions growled and prowled restlessly, but Barrow stood before the grave like a guardian. He didn't let any of them near. From then on, even wild predators avoided the place, as though honoring a man they had never known. Years passed. Barrow became the leader of his pride, strong and wise. But every rainy season, he returned to the grave. Rangers often found his tracks and tufts of his mane left in the grass, as though he had left a piece of himself there. People began to call the place the Lion's Watch, telling visitors the legend of an unusual friendship. And when Barrow himself grew old, he came to the stream one final time. His steps were heavy, his breath uneven, but he made it to the grave and lay beside it. The Rangers found him there in the morning and understood. He had gone to where he would meet his only human once again. From that day on, the story lived in the hearts of all who heard it, reminding them, true friendship knows no boundaries, not between species, not between life and death.